Hello and welcome back. Up until now, our center button has been completely self-contained. It's only been concerned with its own appearance on the screen. But sometimes React components need to interact with things outside of themselves, perhaps with a database or even just the local DOM. And quite often this might result in the state of the external entity changing. And for this reason, we call these side effects. In this lesson, we're going to look into side effects. We're going to see what they are. We'll see why they require special care, and we'll learn how to work with them correctly in React. What we're going to do is we're going to modify the center button. It's going to have a couple of states. It's going to have an active state and an inactive state. And when it transitions from inactive to active, it's going to register an event handler in the DOM. And again, when it goes from being active to inactive, it will deregister the event handler. And so the side effect is going to be the effect upon the DOM, whether it has an event handler registered. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is just modify this counter variable. I'm going to call it active instead. Just do a rename. And I'm going to rename the setter function. It's going to now be called setActive. And the initial value is no longer going to be a number, it's going to be a Boolean false, because active is going to be a Boolean variable. I'm going to change the message as well. So I'm going to use a JavaScript, what's called a ternary operator here. It'll test the value of active, and then if it's true, it'll evaluate to the first value after the question mark, so to say the string active. And if the Boolean value is false, then it will evaluate to the next value after the colon, so I'll say inactive. So after this line of code has run, message will either contain the string active or the string inactive, depending on the value of this Boolean. The next change I'm going to make is to this onClick handler. You see in between the curly braces we've defined an arrow function, and this is the body of the arrow function. This is what it actually does, and I'm going to change that. Instead of calling setActive, it's going to call a function that I'm about to write called handle click. And let's go and write that function. It's going to be an arrow function. And the reason I'm doing this is I want the function to contain more code than I really want to write down here. It would be quite ugly putting a whole bunch of code in the middle of a button tag. So I'm going to write this just to keep it nice and modular. So handle click equals an arrow function like that. And the content of the arrow function is going to be incredibly simple to start with. It's simply going to test the value of active, and if it's true, it's going to set it false, and if it's false, it's going to set it true. So let's just do that. I'm going to say if active is false, then set active true, else set active false. And that's enough for now. Let's just test this. We should see that initialize is active with false. The message on the button responds to active being false, so it should say inactive. But when we press the button, it'll call handle click. It'll see that active is false, and so it'll set it true, and that'll toggle the message. It'll go backwards and forwards. So let's have a look at that. It starts with inactive. I click on it, it goes to active and backwards and forwards. So that's all good. Now, what we're going to do is now introduce the actual side effect. We're going to introduce our event handler. And the event handler is simply a way of saying to the DOM, whenever an event occurs, I want you to call my function and pass it a parameter to tell me what's happened. So let's start with the function itself. It's incredibly simple. So here's a function called logKey. It's going to take the parameter that's passed to it from the DOM. Let's rename this to event, a bit more clear. So we're expecting the DOM to call log key and pass a parameter which we're going to call event. And all it's going to do is it's going to write to the console log. It'll write key pressed. And then it's expecting the event object to have a property called key, and it's going to print that out. So what we're expecting to happen is when the user presses the key A or S, it will print out A then S. So let's register this function. We'll tell the DOM to call it, and that's using a DOM function call add event listener. And the first parameter is saying what we want it to listen for, which is a key press, and the second parameter is our function, our callback function. And while we're at it, we might as well deregister the event listener when we go inactive. And finally, I'm just going to put a couple of console log messages in their click handler. So we can actually see what's going on. So now when the user clicks on the button, it'll call handle click. And assuming we start off inactive, it'll register the event handler. It'll toggle the state to true, so it becomes active, and it'll print a message in the console saying activator listener added. And then with the listener in place, we should find that when we press keys on the keyboard, we get this log message. So let's see that working. To do that, I'm going to have to bring up the developer tools and the console window in particular. And now when I click on the button, we can see it's gone active again, but this time it's printed this console message out. And if I press ASDF, we can see these nice little messages in the console window. If I now deactivate it, again we get the message in the window. And now if I press ASDF, nothing's actually happening. So this all appears to be working. And you might be forgiven for thinking this is a perfectly good solution. But there are some problems looming. This lesson's been going on long enough now. So in the next lesson, we'll see where this can go wrong. And in the following lesson, we'll find out how to fix it. So I'll see you shortly.